Hey, dear listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what comes out of my face as I watch.
The matter is, we have our green card renewal coming up, and we're not going to jeopardize that for a birthday party. That's it.
Why does he have a renewal interview? Isn't it? I thought they just renew it. Why is his different?
No, you have to request. Sometimes they make you come in for an interview. It just depends. Everybody's different.
Good. Hopefully he gets sent back.
Red flags.
What? Can you imagine your sister saying that to you? The father of your kid, the love of your life, your husband? We've seen this kind of behavior before, but somehow this is worse, right? Like when Nicole's family were like, Azan doesn't really love you. I mean, there was actually some signs, but why would you? I mean, wow. It chills me. It's psychopathic. I don't know her personality, but the lack of remorse, the callousness. To think such a thing would be awful, but to say it and to cackle like that. Yeah, so it just ruined his life, your daughter's life. Hopefully that happens.
Is his different?
No, you have to request. Sometimes they make you come in for an interview. It just depends. Everybody's different.
Good. Hopefully he gets sent back.
Red flags.
If I were Libby, I would just be like, peace out. We're never talking again. I don't care how good of a relationship that they have or have had. If someone said something like that to me, it would be over. There would just be the end of it. And it's not the first time that, it's not like some anomaly that the sister is expressing. I'd just be like, no, I can't do this. That would kill any goodwill I had towards someone. I mean, wow. And for what? What did Andrei do? What has he done? What did he do? What has he done?
I know my sisters have not really been much of a fan of Andrei, but joking about his deportation is just rude.
It's not just rude, it's psychopathic. To cackle about ruining 3 people's lives. Even if you hated him, which wouldn't make any sense, but even if you did, wouldn't you care about your sister, your niece? You're just like, and again, I always just have to check in because like when Angela's going after Michael, I'm like, you get kind of not gaslit, but sort of brainwashed by their behavior that they've done something horribly wrong. But when you just think about it, you're like, wait, so Michael just has an Instagram and various people have commented on his Instagram. Some of them happen to be female, according to Angela. That's it. That's the only thing that's happened recently. So with regards to Andrei, in my head, I'm like, well, Andrei had, and I'm thinking, well, what has he done, really? He was violent with Charlie, and as I said earlier, it could be argued that he at least participated in it, but of course Charlie did as well. And from the way they were talking, I think they concluded that the common denominator in the problem is mainly Charlie, not Andrei. Okay, what else was their massive complaint about Andrei was that he was working with their dad, and the dad was choosing to work with him. And yeah, I remember thinking like, well, the only way that it would justify all this hatred about Andrei is if Andrei was truly manipulating and lying, or, suppose that could have happened, but I'm guessing they would mention it here if it had, and there's no evidence of that happening. I think Andrei was just like, hey, I can either work my butt off and start from the bottom in some other industry like truck driving, which will take me away from the family, or I could learn the trade of real estate and work for my father-in-law, and I'll be able to work not only with my father-in-law, but also my wife, because she does that work too. I'll be able to work from home at times and be a better father, earn a lot more money, a lot more opportunity. You would be stupid not to take that option and not to ask for it. The father, Chuck, never said no. He was always up for that. So that's his big crime, those incidents, right? Like, what else did he do? It's just mind-boggling. And I'm just remembering when they went to, he's from Moldova, right? Somewhere in that region anyway. And they're in his home country and they're just like completely ridiculing the culture and the food and everything's disgusting and below them. And like, I'm just reminded of all that. And like the contempt in me is building, I'll tell you, or returning, or has more reason to exist. I don't know. Like it's very, there are things on this show that will provoke contempt for me. And this is one of them.
Who the talks like that? Got a sister that's supposed to support you. And hopefully when they all get together for my mom's party, they realize that Andrei is not the problem and it's actually Charlie. Hopefully he gets sent back. What a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, I'm glad she said something in that tone too. Just like, what a stupid fucking thing to say. Like, are you a child? Like, what? Because it's so uncalled for and so when I say psychopathic, it's an adjective meaning callousness, lack of empathy, lack of remorse, maybe even a little sadistic, wanting to harm other people, self-centered. And so she's still smiling about it. Yikes. Now, people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to do those kinds of things. They do it because of, so if I was to take a guess, I would say that the family has so many problems, and each individual member of this family has so many problems that which requires a huge need for something to build self-esteem, to build connection, to build distraction from everyone's individual issues that are probably very, very persistent and deep. And everyone's traumas are also probably along those lines, that they will do anything in their power to distract themselves from that pain and that ongoing stress. And they decided a long time ago that Andrei provides them with that. So they are willing to psychopathically sacrifice him on that altar because they don't see any other way out of it. That would be my hypothesis.
Do you not want to see me ever again? Because I would move to Moldova.
Libby, I kind of feel like it's heading that way anyway, to be honest with you. He's already threatening Mom. He might threaten to keep you and, Ellie away from me.
What? Why am I surprised? So, okay, I have to reorient in my head so I'm not so surprised. They are delusional about Andrei. They're back to that. They were that way before. I mean, before I was always like, well, maybe I'm missing something because we're not there. And I did hold out for the possibility that Andrei was manipulating Chuck, but it doesn't seem, that hypothesis might have been somewhat true, but there's no evidence of that, and it didn't pan out that way, obviously. So I remember concluding that there's a good chance that they were delusional as a group against him, a collective delusion for the needs of the family cohesion and at least some semblance of self-esteem that they could have, because if they scapegoated him, they would distract them from their own deep, deep, deep problems. But I wasn't quite sure, obviously, because I'm watching a reality TV show. Seeing this transition back to, because it was so predictable, it's just a classic example of a system returning to homeostasis. And Libby now is also being scapegoated, I think, to some extent. And my hypothesis about that, I remember going back, was that for some reason, Libby is seemingly the healthiest person in that family. I don't know that. There's also a number of siblings that aren't even on the reality TV show, so you got to wonder, are they even more healthy? Or, I don't know. But anyway, so Libby always seemed, at least in the edit, more differentiated than her sisters. And so, like when there'd be blow-ups, even with Andrei, Libby would hold it together pretty well. She would stand her ground, but she would also not get super triggered and not fight back. And so my hypothesis is that, and this is just a total hypothesis, that for Libby, she was spared the issues. I wouldn't be surprised if the parents had a lot of conflict leading up to the divorce and maybe around the divorce. And Libby, I think being the youngest one, was too young to go through that in a way that absorbed a lot of those traumas than the older sisters had. I don't even know if she's the youngest, but if she were, that could be one hypothesis, because that will happen sometimes as the older. Think of John and Patrick and Thais, that John was the older one And John seemingly has a lot more emotional issues, a lot more need for alcohol to cope. Patrick also has issues, but often the reason for that is because the younger child was spared, and the older child sometimes even takes it on because they feel like they want to protect their younger sibling. Who knows? And if that is the case, which I don't know, then the family could actually, the older sisters could really resent Libby. Or Libby was spared for some other reason, and they resent her for that. And so this, scapegoating of Andrei could be an extension of that, like a displacement. Because I've often wondered about that. Like, is this a displacement of their hatred and resentment and anger towards Libby? But they don't. But in the family, you aren't allowed to do that directly. So they had to scapegoat Andrei. I don't know. It's just an hypothesis. So it now could be manifesting here now, just like, well, we have decided we hate you too. We've always hated you, or something like that. But just imagine if you're Libby. I just can't imagine what she's going through right now. I mean, look at her face. What is happening right now? Andrei's done nothing wrong. He's a good person, trust me. And the four of us were on the same page last week, and now we're back to this, and it's worse than before. And that can actually be the case sometimes, is that as families progress through time, the problems that will escalate will compound, and thus the scapegoating or whatever weird coping mechanism they have, drinking, scapegoating, will become more intense. So I don't know. It's possible that's happening. But if I were Libby's friend, I'd be like, cut ties. It'll suck for a while. It'll be sad. There'll be a lot of grief, and there'll be a lot of guilt trips. But imagine a life without any of this.
Pure money for his family. And like, my dad's gonna go along with that. I don't need to like be a part of that.
Or take orders from the new guy?
Yeah, and then think that like I'm gonna be like, oh, I miss Chuck. Like, come on.
Andrei has fought with literally everyone in the family. Your sisters, your sister's husbands, your dad, you, your mom, me.
Like,
yeah, just trying really hard to get the family back to its homeostasis. They showed a scene where they were talking about and taking pictures for her foot fetish business, which is fine. There's nothing. I hope that people don't. You cannot like, if you don't like Charlie, you cannot like him. If you don't like his wife, you cannot like her. But we do not want to shame people for their jobs or their bodies or for their kinks or how they make money in a legal way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's totally fine. Sell pictures of yourself. I mean, in a certain sense, that's what I'm doing. I'm yammering on the internet to make a living. And some people don't have to yammer. They just show pictures of their feet. And so, it's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Libby's changed, and he basically like tries to control her, what she does and what she says. And then it's like, okay, Andrei turns you against me. How does that work?
Your siblings and your dad need to wake up and realize what Andrei is doing to the entire family, because we have not done anything to them.
If my dad would...
Wow, we have not done anything to them. And I'm guessing that we've only seen a little bit. I have a hard time believing that they cut off Charlie just because of that one incident. I have a feeling like it's been going on for a while. And it seemed like when he showed up at that barbecue and there was that altercation between him and Andrei, it seemed like the family had been experiencing a lot of other activity, other behavior from him, and had been talking about it. But I don't know that, so who knows?
Step up and like, nah, bro, this is bull. Like, Charlie's my son.
Yes.
It'll be different. I'm gonna prove to them that I'm not the one that tries to start fights with everybody. I'm not the instigator.
All right. Well, I mean, Andrei certainly is an instigator to some extent, for sure. So another hypothesis I'm remembering, and they're commenting on it a little bit. I don't know if I showed all the clips, but he was talking about how his dad chose Andrei over him, which is not how it looked. What it looked like was you gave the father an ultimatum that didn't make any sense to him, and he's like, well, if you want to make this about that, then I guess that's what it is. But I think the father was like, I think the father's a pleaser, and I think he wants everyone to love him. He wants everyone to get along, and the family wasn't really situated like that. And so I think if you ask Chuck, he'd be like, look, I didn't reject my son. He just exploded and made things completely unworkable. And so it wasn't a matter of I was choosing Andrei over him. It was just like, I wanted to work with Charlie. I wanted to work with my daughters. I wanted to work with Andrei. And the rest of the kids just had this complete weird freak out about it. And so they just removed themselves from, anyway. So anyway, I think one of the hypotheses that is at play here is that the family is desperate for the father's approval and love. And there seemed to be a lot of vying for his attention. And so, like an obsession with who will dad keep in the family, who will he employ, because I think also the way that the family business was situated was that it was like on a case-by-case basis, like a job by, and so the father would have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to give this job, this house to this child, and I'm going to give this other one to this other child. So it played into, I think, their pathology of desperation for approval from him. If I was to take a stab in the dark, I would say that the family traumas was that the father worked a lot. So early childhood stuff when the siblings were young, the father worked a lot and was considered by the siblings to be like this wonderful parent that they're always trying to please. And the father was nice and would come home and he was nice. The mom probably was kind of in the Charlie camp, some kind of issue like that. And when they were at home, the mom and dad would fight a lot and lots of enmeshment. The kids were probably triangulated a lot into their relationship, and particularly the older siblings. A lot of trauma there as a result of that. Charlie has a lot of emotional dysregulation issues. Maybe he has to drink. Again, I'm hypothesizing on hypotheses or speculating on speculation, so who knows. But there's a possibility of that. And that early experience that the kids had around, okay, when dad is home, we're all, and there's a lot of kids. So I think inherently it'd be hard for for Chuck to please everyone. And maybe since the father had all the money that everyone, including his wife, were trying to get his attention, trying to get money from him. And then what could happen is, since everyone feels neglected, they could focus on money and jobs as a proxy for love that they feel like they might not ever get. Some kids will do that. Some families will do that. And then when Andrei comes into the picture, another frustrating factor in all this is that the father was going to potentially spread his love and money around to yet another person, which was highly threatening to the kids, the grown adult kids, because they've chronically for their entire lives felt neglected and left out. And they reached an equilibrium where they were all getting some love and attention from him. But then Andrei comes along and it's just like, no, we're already at capacity. You got to go. And so they, in their minds, just in a very childish way, when you think about it, at least what's being presented to us is not only their behavior, but also, in terms of the violence and the name calling, but also just the black and white thinking they had about it. Think about a kid. For a more common example is you have a 4-year-old, 5-year-old who is neglected to some extent. Then there's a new child that's born into the family. Or maybe there's a blending of families or something. And it wouldn't be unusual for a 5-year-old to go through an adjustment period where they see that other sibling as a threat and will make up stuff, might even lie. They might break something and say, Charlie did it, that kind of thing. And it wouldn't be unusual to see that, right? And then the thing that you would want to do in that situation, if you're a family, is notice that as an indication that the child is wanting more attention and love, and so you got to pour it on, and so make the kid feel special, loved, secure, and then that deceptive or delusional behavior or targeting behavior to the other sibling would naturally go away. You don't punish the kid for it. It's just like, oh, the kid is competing with the sibling, which means they must feel neglected. And that's something to think about whenever you see your kids competing with each other and it's getting to a pathological level. It's probably an indication that they don't feel loved enough. They don't feel like they're getting enough, individual attention. So anyway, Andrei comes along and they have this black and white childish way of thinking, and that might explain part of the reason why they're against him. So now Charlie and Megan are trying to get back into the family, and they accurately predict that if they proceed in scapegoating Andrei, they will get back into the family and everything will go back to normal.
This whole situation with my family would have never happened if Andrei didn't come here,
No.
Like, he is the catalyst for all this.
I agree with that. None of this would have happened if he hadn't had arrived. and he is the catalyst. That's an interesting use of words, right? Catalyst. Okay, what is a catalyst? A catalyst is a material, an element, a component that facilitates a reaction. The reaction wants to happen, so to speak, and the catalyst comes in and promotes something that had a lot of energy potential. There was a lot of potential for an explosion to happen, and the catalyst comes along and then initiates that, right? So that is, I think, accurate, that the family was already at the breaking point of its capacity to handle everything. Andrei comes along and it just highlighted and mixed everything up, and then boom, everything happened.
I think the only thing that's going to open their eyes is when it happens to them. Then they'll realize who's doing this.
Yep.
It's not me.
Until they wake up and see what Andrei has done, I don't see anything changing.
And I've said this before, that it's possible that Charlie is being scapegoated wrongly as well. That for the family, since Charlie presented a very easy scapegoatable person, and maybe pushing the father to cry and cry and cry, the family switched from Andrei to Charlie. Not that it's okay to scapegoat either one of them, but the family always needs a scapegoat. So it's possible that Charlie and Megan are at least somewhat accurate in saying we're being unfairly treated, but it's not okay to say, well, let's also scapegoat another person. How about we all sit down and really figure out what's going wrong in this family and try to recover from our traumas as a family so we don't need to scapegoat anyone anymore. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please, please, really take care of yourself. Check in with yourselves. How you doing? What are your needs? Do you need support? Do you need a rest? Do you need to draw boundaries? Do you need a break? Do you need some love? Do you need some hugs? Do you need some fun times? Do you need a cry? Notice that. Take care of yourself. Signal to others what you need, because you deserve it. You really, really do.